Where do you expect art? Where in your universe, your everyday life, does art exist? Maybe the better question to ask is, where wouldn't you expect art? Does it exist on your commute to work, or in your public park, or in the lobby of a passing office building? Wherever art exists in your life, but especially where it usually doesn't, is where the works of Jenny Holzer thrive. Jenny Holzer is a conceptual artist who has been creating public works since 1975. Holzer's art stands to question the common perceptions of our cultural contexts, especially in how culture is influenced and manipulated by media, politics, stereotypes, and other preconceptions. Many of her works inspire this kind of thought-provoking nature not through imagery, but through the medium of language. While many artists use language in junction with imagery for their art, Holzer instead opts to use language in itself by itself to portray her artistic messages. She works with textual art, a mixture of both text and media shown through a variety of different, mainly public, mediums. Her works have been featured on street posters, movie marquees, benches, canvases, LED signs, billboards, and light projections, among others. Holzer spoke about the driving purpose of her work in a highlight for Art21's Art in the 21st Century special in 2007, saying, "I want people to concentrate on the content of the writing, and not whodunit. I want the work to be of utility to as many people as possible, and I think if it were attributed to me, it would be easier to toss." In cultivating her art for anonymity in public spaces, Holzer pushes the art world out into the open of the everyday. She does this by flipping public familiarity with the use of language on its head, since many public uses of texts are usually mediums for advertising. Where one would usually see promotions or slogans, Holzer instead places her art. The content she creates is disconcerting in a way that is not common for public spaces, which invites second glances and longer looks. The first of these public works debuted back in the early 70s, which included a series of aphoristic maxims that Holzer dubbed truisms. These truisms were usually quick bursts of a sentence, a handful of words at most. But their length lends to their power. Short and quick, they carry a visceral punch. Among them include, "Abuse of power comes as no surprise," "Money creates taste," "It is in your self-interest to find a way to be very tender," and are just a few among a mass of these aphoristic sayings. These maxims had their origins as anonymous street posters, inviting participation as well as a new outlook on unknown public art. Holzer continued this method of breaking the barrier between the art world and the domestic, and it wasn't long before truisms had their first electronic debut in 1982. Holzer's first use of electronic mediums for her work started with New York City's Times Square LED signs, bright billboards that fit her works near similarly to the aggressive marketing usually found in their places. Since then, truisms have had their placings on posters, movie marquees, billboards, LED signs, and even mediums like condom wrappers and register receipts, among others. In 1999, they were even engraved into paving stones of the U.S. Courthouse and Federal Building in Sacramento, California, to bring awareness to judicial and political concerns. In a 1989 New York Times review, Grace Gluick relates Holzer to, "Not unlike some televangelists, Holzer combines an old-fashioned preacher's zeal for spreading her gospel with an advertiser's skill at public presentation." Holzer has commented in the same article that she isn't trying to thumb her nose at advertising, but instead chooses to use a form of communication in her works that has a validity behind it, as well as a past of certifiable messages getting across. These truisms are a testament of Holzer's art being fundamentally useful, evocative works. They contain bold themes and ideas, that of power, culture, gender, class, among a variety of other societal issues and concepts. These works are often scathingly accurate and appealing to a modern culture, one of mass media, rampant capitalism, and corruption-run politics. Having been around nearly 50 years, these maxims continue to be paraded today on a variety of platforms, including that of fan-run Twitter bots posting Holzer's truisms on a programmed schedule. The fact that they are still being celebrated today says a lot about how our culture has or hasn't shifted since their creation. Even just 2 years ago, in 2017, Holzer gave permission for the Me Too movement, "We Are Not Surprised," to use the truism "abuse of power comes as no surprise" in an open letter condemning long-established sexism in the art world. Much of Holzer's work has to do with the impact of her art on the audience, focusing on the takeaway or the time after art, how you, as the viewer, interpreted the work and what you took away from it, what you questioned, felt, or even thought. No work of Holzer attributes to this mindset more than that of her LED and projection works. The method of light projections and LED works have been in Holzer's repertoire for a long period of her career, with works that have been shown worldwide projected on various buildings, rivers, and other surfaces. Holzer speaks about showcasing her art in this method in a 1985 interview with Gene Siegel. A great feature of the electronic signs is their capacity to move content. I love that because motion is much like the spoken word. You can emphasize phrases, you can roll and pause, the kinetic equivalent to inflection. It's a real plus to have that programming capacity. I write my text by saying the words out loud, or I write and then say words to test them. Having text move is an extension of that process. Holzer's motion-centered pieces use their area to parallel their content, adding a visual element or a tangible poetics to the work itself. She designates this through the use of specific colors, pauses, typographical elements, and even omissions within the poems themselves. One of Holzer's works, Softer, is an exhibition at England's Blenheim Palace, a treasured landmark that makes a beautiful Baroque setting for a collection of pieces centered on the aftermath of war. Included in the exhibition are light projections of first-hand accounts of recent conflicts from interviews given by United Kingdom veterans and military personnel from the Not Forgotten Association. Also included are poems by the late poet Anna Swir and contemporary refugee writers. In a 2017 review of the exhibition for Vice, Hannah Ewens regards Holzer's sprawling texts on the palace grounds with a tangible weight, saying that they thud 10 times heavier as they reveal themselves in front of you, before letters wrap around the curves of the brick and slip away seemingly into the sky. I felt as awake, emotionally and physically, as you might after having 3 strong cups of coffee. Holzer's works center themselves in communication. Whether she finds an audience with those on the street or within gallery halls, there is connectivity present at the center of every work. What I love about Holzer's art is that it doesn't hold your hand and lead you to the point of their creation. Instead, they invite participation, internalization, some even inciting extreme amounts of interactivity. In Holzer's pieces exists a middle ground where both you and Holzer exist in the space of the piece, as the artist and the audience, because both of you live in the same space the art is conversing about, this culture, this society. Holzer's works are standstills and motions of self-examination, ones that we can't escape. For most of our lives, we are constantly looking. At screens, at billboards, our attention is always half focused on the action of seeing. Holzer chooses to place her work in those spaces, out of the norm, in the way, for us to see. Presentations of her work are exacting, accessible, and endlessly striving for connection to different people, not just a mainly artistic audience. With commentary on capitalism and commercialization and war alike, Holzer pulls from both good and ghastly texts, and isn't afraid to mean something with what she makes out of them. In this way, she prioritizes meaning in such a sincere and vulnerable way that is necessary and crucial to analyzing the human condition. It carries tangibility, weight, a gravity. Holzer's works provide us with knowledge on our past, present, and probable futures. She lays out our wrongdoings and capabilities as a society before us and asks us to consider them. just to think about them, to stew in what we've created for a while. And that when we're done, to use that knowledge, that consideration for not only ourselves, but for others, and to figure out, from personal and collective experience, the next step to take.